I
Prince William
demand an
STRIPS, the royal
explanation for
guard
this
of his post.
outrage.
What
Your
happened next shamed the
silence will
palace.
not be
From a young
tolerated.
age, he had been trained to understand the importance of protocol, tradition, and discipline. Whether it was attending formal events, meeting foreign dignitaries, or taking part in ceremonial duties, William always appeared poised, careful, and respectful. The public admired him for this balance of authority and approachability. But on this particular day, everything seemed to shift in an unexpected way. It was a crisp morning, with the sun shining gently over the historic palace grounds. The air was filled with the sounds of footsteps on stone paths, the soft murmur of visitors, and the distant echoes of ceremonial drums preparing for the day's events. Inside the palace, the usual calm and routine had been interrupted by a subtle undercurrent of excitement. Today was not just another ceremonial occasion. It was a moment where the royal household had invited special guests, dignitaries, and members of the public to witness the timeless traditions of the monarchy. Among the audience, cameras were ready, reporters were prepared to capture every moment, and the royal guards were standing at their posts, immaculately dressed in their ceremonial uniforms. Their red coats shone brilliantly in the sunlight, their black hats towering and precise, and their expressions were stoic, revealing no emotion. These guards had undergone years of training to master the art of discipline and focus. Every step they took, every turn they made was executed with perfection, or at least, that was the expectation. As Prince William arrived at the palace, he moved with the quiet authority that he had honed over decades of public appearances. His presence alone commanded respect, yet he was also approachable in a way that made people feel seen and acknowledged. Today, however, there was something different in his demeanor. He was attentive, observing the palace grounds, the arrangement of the guards, and the overall ceremony with a keen eye. While the royal staff had prepared meticulously, he seemed determined to ensure that nothing was left to chance. Every detail mattered, from the alignment of the guards to the posture of the ceremonial officials. Nothing escaped his notice. It was during this careful observation that he noticed something unusual. One of the royal guards, who had been standing at his post for hours in the freezing weather, seemed slightly distracted. His posture was not as rigid as it should have been. His movements, when he adjusted his hat, were a fraction of a second slower than the others. And although it was a minor deviation, in the eyes of the prince, it mattered greatly. The royal guard's uniform was immaculate, yet his lack of focus was noticeable to someone trained to recognize even the smallest lapse. William's eyes, sharp and unwavering, studied the young guard as he maintained his position. He understood that discipline was not just about following rules. It was about respect, honor, and maintaining the dignity of the monarchy. And in that moment, he felt that this young officer had fallen short. The prince's initial reaction was subtle. He took a small step closer to the guard, not to startle him, but to observe more closely. The guard, unaware of the scrutiny, continued in his routine. William could sense a slight tension in the air. Perhaps the young officer was nervous, or perhaps he had become tired from standing still for so long. Whatever the reason, the prince's sense of responsibility would not allow him to ignore the lapse. In his mind, the ceremony, the guests, and the very image of the monarchy depended on every detail being flawless. Even a minor mistake could have consequences far beyond the palace walls. As the minutes passed, the tension grew. William remained calm on the outside, yet his thoughts raced internally. He remembered the countless hours of training he himself had undergone, the discipline instilled in him since childhood, and the importance of representing the monarchy with honor. This moment, although small in the grand scheme of history, was symbolic of the standards the royal family upheld, and he could not allow even a tiny deviation to go unnoticed. His gaze locked onto the guard, steady and unwavering. It was a silent warning, though unspoken, that he expected perfection. The audience, meanwhile, continued to watch the ceremony with polite interest. Many were unaware of the subtle drama unfolding just steps away. Cameras clicked, journalists jotted notes, and visitors admired the sight of the royal guard standing perfectly in line. But for William, the distraction of the young guard was impossible to ignore. He weighed his options carefully. Normally, minor lapses could be corrected quietly behind the scenes without causing a scene. But there was something about today, the setting, and the symbolic importance of the event that made him decide to act immediately. He knew that leadership was not just about patience. It was also about setting standards and taking responsibility when necessary. Then, in a moment that shocked those closest to him, Prince William stepped forward. He approached the guard with measured but decisive steps, his expression calm yet resolute. For the audience and palace staff who were close enough to notice, it was an astonishing sight. The prince, heir to the throne, was walking directly toward a member of the royal guard in full ceremonial uniform. The atmosphere grew tense as whispers spread among the aides and fellow officers. Everyone sensed that something unusual was about to happen. When he reached the guard, William spoke quietly, his words firm but not angry. He instructed the young officer to step aside from his post. The guard, initially confused and unsure how to respond, hesitated for a moment, glancing toward his commanding officers. But William's presence left no room for hesitation. This was a direct command from the future king, and it was to be obeyed without question. Slowly, the guard stepped back, his posture stiff, his expression a mix of embarrassment and respect. In that instant, the palace witnessed something rarely seen, a royal intervening directly to maintain discipline in a ceremonial setting. The moment seemed to stretch endlessly. Observers could not believe what they were seeing. The cameras caught every second, capturing the precise moment the prince relieved the officer of his duties at that post. It was an act that was both surprising and, to some, shocking. Yet for William, it was necessary. The ceremonial standards were not just about appearances. They were about the history, tradition, and dignity of the monarchy. He understood that one small lapse could have symbolic consequences, especially in a world where every gesture of the royal family was scrutinized by millions. Even as the young guard stepped aside, William maintained a composed and steady presence. He did not scold or belittle. Instead, he demonstrated the seriousness of the situation with his calm authority. His actions conveyed that the lapse was significant but not unforgivable. The other guards, witnessing this, straightened their postures and focused even more intently. It was a lesson in discipline that would not be forgotten. For the staff and guests, it was a rare glimpse into the meticulous standards upheld within the royal household. After the guard had been moved, William returned to his observations of the ceremony. The event continued, yet the air was filled with a quiet tension, a sense of respect for the prince's unwavering commitment to order. Staff whispered among themselves, trying to process the unusual incident while continuing to maintain decorum. The palace itself seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the gravity of the moment. It was clear that this was not a simple correction. It was a demonstration of leadership, responsibility, and adherence to tradition. By the end of the morning, the incident had already begun to circulate among palace aides and observers. Many admired the prince for his dedication, while others were surprised at the directness of his approach. Regardless of opinion, one thing was certain: Prince William had made an impression that would last. His actions reminded everyone that the monarchy's standards were not just ceremonial. They were deeply ingrained values that demanded attention, respect, and accountability. And for that young guard, it would be a moment to remember for the rest of his life, a lesson in discipline delivered by none other than the future king. The story of this morning would eventually reach the public, though only through carefully controlled channels. The palace understood that every action taken by the royal family was of interest to the world, and even a minor lapse could become headline news. But for those present, the lesson was clear. Prince William valued discipline, respect, and the dignity of the monarchy above all else. And on that crisp, sunlit morning, he had shown, in a way few had ever witnessed, that even the smallest details mattered in the grand traditions of the royal household. The palace, usually a place of quiet routine and unbroken protocol, now hummed with a subtle energy that no one could quite name. Prince William's decision to relieve the guard of his post had sent a ripple through the ranks of the royal guards, the staff, and the attending officials. It was unusual for a royal, even the heir to the throne, to take such direct action during a ceremonial event. Normally, lapses in protocol would be handled discreetly, away from public view, often by a senior officer who would quietly correct the behavior. But today had been different. Today, Prince William had acted immediately, directly, and decisively. And that action had consequences far beyond what anyone in the room could have imagined. The first reaction was shock. The guards, trained to remain stoic and disciplined no matter what occurred, found themselves caught off guard. Their eyes flickered toward each other in quick, unspoken communication, as if to ask, "Did we really see that?" The young officer, who had been removed from his post, stood a short distance away, his back straight but his hands trembling slightly. Embarrassment colored his expression, though he tried to hide it behind the professionalism drilled into him through years of training. He was aware that every visitor, every official, and every camera lens seemed to be focusing on the unusual situation. The pressure weighed heavily, and yet he remained on the grounds, awaiting further instructions, trying not to falter further under the intense scrutiny. Meanwhile, the palace staff scrambled to understand what had just happened. Assistants whispered rapidly among themselves, moving through the corridors with hushed urgency. Some were trying to reassure one another that the incident was not a catastrophe, while others feared that this rare public correction could reflect poorly on the royal household. It was a delicate balance. The palace had built a reputation over centuries for elegance, decorum, and precision. Any deviation from those standards, no matter how minor, could become the subject of speculation. And with Prince William being so closely watched by the public and the media, even a single action could quickly become headline news. The aides closest to the prince observed him carefully. William himself, however, maintained an outward calm. His expression did not show frustration or anger. Instead, it reflected the quiet authority and awareness that he had cultivated throughout his life. He moved with purpose, checking on the alignment of the other guards, ensuring that the ceremony continued without interruption, and reassuring the attendees that the event was proceeding as planned. In his mind, he understood the lesson that had just been delivered. Leadership was about responsibility, attention to detail, and the courage to act when necessary. The palace staff, although initially startled, began to regain composure, taking cues from William's unwavering demeanor. The young guard, meanwhile, faced the most immediate and personal consequences. While his misstep had been minor, a momentary lapse in posture or attention, the public nature of the correction made it feel much larger. He was aware that this moment would be remembered for a long time, not just by himself, but by his colleagues and the wider royal community. Yet amid the embarrassment, he felt a strange sense of clarity. Prince William's actions were not meant to humiliate. They were a demonstration of the standards expected within the royal guard. It was a reminder that discipline was not just a requirement. It was a reflection of pride, honor, and commitment. Word of the incident spread quickly through the palace, reaching officials who were not present at the event. By the time the ceremony concluded, senior members of the royal household were fully aware of what had occurred. Some were concerned about the optics. After all, the public and the press often scrutinized every detail of royal behavior. A story about a prince publicly correcting a guard could be spun in multiple ways: as a tale of discipline and dedication, or as a moment of embarrassment for both the guard and the monarchy. Discussions began about how to manage the narrative without undermining the authority of the prince or the integrity of the palace. Social media, although not immediately aware, would soon amplify the story beyond the palace walls. Within hours, those present at the event had begun sharing their observations with the world. Tweets, posts, and photos captured fragments of the incident: the sharp movement of Prince William toward the guard, the pause in the guard's posture, the quiet tension that filled the air. People outside the palace speculated endlessly, debating the significance of the event. Some praised the prince for his commitment to standards and discipline, viewing the action as a demonstration of leadership. Others expressed surprise at the public nature of the correction, feeling that it had been an unusual approach for someone in his position. Inside the palace, the senior officers of the royal guard gathered to review the situation. Normally, such matters would be addressed quietly, with a private conversation between the guard, his commanding officer, and any relevant staff. But today had broken that tradition. William had acted decisively and in full view of others, leaving the officers to reassess how to maintain discipline while respecting the chain of command. There was an understanding that the prince's decision, while unusual, had been motivated by a desire to uphold the highest standards. It was not a question of disrespect or reprimand, but of reinforcing a culture of excellence that had been cultivated over centuries. The young guard, although initially embarrassed, began to understand the lesson more clearly. He was reassigned temporarily to less visible duties, giving him a chance to regain confidence and composure. During this period, he received careful guidance from his senior officers, who explained that the prince's actions were intended to serve as a reminder to all guards about the importance of attention, focus, and discipline. The experience, although challenging, became an opportunity for growth. He realized that mistakes, when handled properly, could become powerful lessons in professionalism, responsibility, and pride in service. Meanwhile, the public reaction continued to grow. Newspapers and online media began reporting the story with careful wording. Some described it as an unexpected display of authority, highlighting Prince William's attention to detail and his commitment to maintaining the dignity of the monarchy. Others focused on the human element. A young officer caught off guard, learning a lesson in discipline from one of the most prominent members of the royal family. The incident became a topic of discussion in living rooms, offices, and online forums, captivating audiences with its combination of tradition, authority, and human emotion. Within the palace, discussions about the incident evolved into deeper reflections on leadership and responsibility. Officials considered how to balance public perception with the reality of maintaining strict ceremonial standards. They recognized that Prince William's actions, while unconventional, demonstrated the qualities expected of a future king: decisiveness, attention to detail, and a willingness to act in defense of tradition and order. These qualities were not just symbolic, they were practical, ensuring that the royal guard remained vigilant, disciplined, and committed to their roles. As the day progressed, the incident became a learning moment for everyone involved. Guards, staff, and aides reflected on the importance of focus, composure, and readiness. They understood that even small lapses could have broader implications, not only for the smooth running of ceremonies, but also for the reputation of the royal household. The young guard, once nervous and embarrassed, gradually regained confidence. With careful guidance and mentorship, he began to see the incident not as a failure, but as a pivotal experience that would shape his future service. By the evening, calm had returned to the palace, but the energy of the morning lingered. Conversations among staff, aides, and officers included subtle references to the prince's intervention, each retelling emphasizing different details: the precision of his movements, the clarity of his instructions, the sense of authority he commanded without raising his voice. It was clear that this was not just a momentary event, but a story that would be remembered, shared, and reflected upon for years to come. Prince William himself took a quiet moment to reflect on the incident. He understood the weight of his actions and the responsibility he carried as the future monarch. Leadership was not just about ceremonial appearances or public admiration. It was about setting standards, acting decisively when necessary, and ensuring that the traditions and values of the monarchy were preserved. In that moment, he reaffirmed his commitment to these principles, knowing that even small actions could have far-reaching effects. The ripple effects of the morning continued to be felt in subtle ways. Guards who had observed the incident were more attentive, officers were more deliberate in their planning, and staff were increasingly aware of the importance of readiness and composure. The young guard, once humbled by the experience, became a source of inspiration for others, demonstrating that discipline and growth often emerge from challenging situations. And so, what began as a single moment of unexpected action had grown into a complex web of lessons, reflections, and adjustments. The palace, with its centuries of history, had witnessed something unusual, yet meaningful. It was a reminder that even in the most structured and traditional environments, moments of human intervention, decisive, careful, and principled, could leave a lasting mark. The story of Prince William and the young guard became more than just an anecdote. It became a narrative about responsibility, leadership, and the enduring value of discipline, respect, and commitment within the royal household. By the time evening settled over the palace, the events of that morning were still very much alive in everyone's minds. The incident with the young royal guard and Prince William had spread through the palace like wildfire. Staff whispered in hallways, guards exchanged subtle glances, and even the most experienced officers found themselves reflecting on what had just transpired. It was rare for a prince, even the heir to the throne, to intervene so directly in the ceremonial duties of his guards. Normally, mistakes of this nature were corrected behind closed doors. Today, however, the lesson had been public, immediate, and unforgettable. The palace, with all its centuries of history, was no stranger to unexpected moments. Protocols were written and refined over hundreds of years, and officers were trained to follow them with unwavering precision. Yet even within this well-ordered environment, human error was inevitable. Guards could become tired, distracted, or nervous. And while minor lapses had always been managed discreetly, the intervention by Prince William demonstrated that even the smallest deviation could not be ignored when the stakes were high. His presence commanded attention, and his actions reminded everyone that leadership meant taking responsibility in every moment, no matter how small it might appear to an outsider. For the young guard, the day had been overwhelming. What had begun as a simple ceremonial duty had turned into a life lesson that he would never forget. Standing aside from his post, he had felt the weight of scrutiny, not just from Prince William, but from the surrounding guards, palace staff, and visiting dignitaries. The embarrassment was tangible, yet it was coupled with a profound understanding of the standards expected of him. He realized that every movement, every turn of the head, and every adjustment of uniform mattered deeply. This was not just about appearing disciplined. It was about honoring the tradition, history, and values of the monarchy. In the hours that followed, discussions about the incident spread beyond the palace walls. Senior officials, aware of the potential for public reaction, began planning carefully how to manage the story. They knew that the modern world was intensely interested in the private moments of the royal family. Social media, news outlets, and online forums could all amplify even the smallest events into widespread conversations. Managing the narrative became essential. The palace needed to convey the message that Prince William's actions were not impulsive or punitive, but a demonstration of his dedication to upholding the highest standards of the royal guard. Meanwhile, the young guard was reassigned temporarily to less prominent duties. This reassignment was not a punishment in the traditional sense. It was a structured opportunity for reflection and growth. He was guided by senior officers who explained the importance of vigilance, focus, and composure in ceremonial roles. Through careful mentorship, the guard learned that mistakes, when addressed constructively, could serve as catalysts for improvement. The experience, though initially difficult, would ultimately strengthen his understanding of discipline, responsibility, and professional pride. Within the palace, staff and officers reflected on the broader implications of the morning's events. Prince William's intervention had demonstrated that leadership was not just about appearances or titles. It was about making decisions, taking responsibility, and reinforcing standards when necessary. The act, though brief, had communicated a powerful message. The Royal Guard's role was both symbolic and practical. Their performance was a reflection of the monarchy itself. Attention to detail, dedication, and adherence to protocol were not optional. They were essential to maintaining the dignity and reputation of the royal household. The story also began to take root in the public imagination. Journalists, commentators, and royal watchers analyzed the incident from multiple perspectives. Some framed it as an inspiring example of discipline and commitment, highlighting Prince William's hands-on approach to leadership. Others emphasized the human aspect, the vulnerability of the young guard, the pressure of performing under scrutiny, and the challenge of meeting exacting standards in a public setting. Across social media platforms, the story prompted discussion, debate, and admiration for the prince's dedication to tradition. Despite the attention, the palace remained calm and measured. Officials were careful not to exaggerate or sensationalize the incident. Their goal was to preserve the dignity of everyone involved, including the young guard, while ensuring that the public understood the importance of the lesson that had been delivered. Communications emphasized that the prince's actions were guided by a commitment to excellence, not by a desire to embarrass or criticize. This approach helped to balance the narrative, reassuring observers that the royal household continued to uphold its long-standing values with integrity and respect. The young guard's personal journey continued in the days following the event. Mentorship sessions, practical exercises, and careful reflection helped him internalize the lessons of discipline, focus, and composure. He began to see the incident not as a moment of failure, but as an opportunity to grow. The guidance from senior officers emphasized that mistakes were not final judgments on one's character, but rather moments to learn, improve, and demonstrate resilience. Gradually, the Guard regained confidence, understanding that the standards set by Prince William were meant to inspire excellence, not fear. Meanwhile, other members of the Royal Guard took note of the event as well. The incident served as a powerful reminder that attention to detail was critical. Even small lapses could have significant consequences, both practically and symbolically. Officers reviewed training procedures, emphasizing readiness, focus, and awareness at all times. The story of Prince William's intervention became a teaching tool, reinforcing the values of vigilance, discipline, and pride in service. In this way, the event strengthened the entire corps, ensuring that future ceremonies would run smoothly and without incident. The palace also recognized the importance of balancing discipline with compassion. While the young guard had been corrected publicly, the overall approach remained thoughtful and measured. Mentorship focused not on punishment, but on guidance and encouragement. The palace understood that maintaining morale was just as important as enforcing protocol. By combining strict standards with support and education, the Royal Guard continued to uphold its traditions while nurturing growth and development among its members. At the same time, the public's fascination with the story continued to grow. Online forums buzzed with analysis, news articles were updated to include eyewitness accounts, and conversations in homes and workplaces often returned to the incident. Many people admired Prince William's commitment to excellence, seeing it as an example of leadership that balanced authority with responsibility. Others reflected on the human side of the story, the young guard's experience, the challenge of maintaining composure under pressure, and the way a single moment could create lessons that lasted a lifetime. The palace, aware of the ongoing attention, continued to emphasize the positive aspects of the story. Communications highlighted the prince's dedication to upholding tradition, the professionalism of the Royal Guard, and the constructive approach to discipline. By focusing on these elements, the royal household reinforced its values while ensuring that the narrative remained respectful and informative. This approach helped to strengthen public trust and admiration for the monarchy, while also honoring the dignity of everyone involved in the incident. For the young guard, the experience became a defining moment in his career. He learned that even the most challenging situations could be transformed into opportunities for growth. He began to take pride in the small details of his work, understanding that every movement, gesture, and adjustment mattered. The guidance and mentorship he received allowed him to regain confidence, and he gradually returned to his duties with renewed focus and determination. His colleagues, observing his resilience and growth, were inspired by his example, reinforcing the culture of excellence within the Royal Guard. Prince William, for his part, continued to demonstrate the qualities that had defined his leadership. His actions reminded everyone that responsibility was not only about ceremony, titles, or appearances. It was about the willingness to act decisively, uphold standards, and guide others with care and attention. By intervening when necessary, he reinforced the values of discipline, respect, and commitment that had been central to the royal household for centuries. The incident became part of a broader narrative of leadership, demonstrating that even small actions could have profound significance. Over the following weeks, the palace reviewed procedures to ensure that similar incidents could be managed effectively in the future. Training sessions were enhanced, mentorship programs were expanded, and communication protocols were refined. The goal was not only to prevent mistakes, but also to ensure that all members of the Royal Guard understood the expectations, responsibilities, and significance of their roles. Prince William's intervention became a reference point in these discussions, illustrating the importance of attentiveness, readiness, and integrity. By the end of this period, the story of the morning had transformed from a moment of tension into a lasting lesson for the palace and the public. The young guard, now more confident and skilled, continued to serve with pride. His experience became a teaching story for new recruits, emphasizing that mistakes could be opportunities for learning and growth. The Royal Guard as a whole emerged stronger, more disciplined, and more aware of the significance of their duties. and Prince William's reputation as a leader who combined authority with thoughtfulness and attention to detail was further reinforced. Even as the palace returned to its usual rhythm, the events of that morning continued to resonate. Staff, officers, and visitors reflected on the lessons learned, appreciating the balance between tradition, discipline, and human understanding. The incident had reminded everyone that even in a centuries-old institution, moments of intervention, guidance, and careful correction could create lasting change. It was a story of leadership, growth, and responsibility, a story that would be remembered for years to come. Ultimately, the palace had witnessed more than just a ceremonial correction. It had observed a demonstration of principles, values, and character that defined the monarchy itself. Prince William's decision to act had set in motion a series of reflections, lessons, and growth that extended far beyond the initial moment. For the young guard, the staff, and the public, it became a story about the importance of discipline, the value of mentorship, and the power of decisive, thoughtful leadership. As the days and weeks passed after that unforgettable morning, the impact of Prince William's decision to relieve the young royal guard of his post continued to resonate within the palace and beyond. What had initially been a brief and unexpected moment had grown into something much larger, a reflection on leadership, discipline, and the values that define the monarchy. For the prince, the episode was a reminder that even the smallest moments required careful attention and thoughtful action. For the young guard, it became a turning point in his life and career, shaping how he approached responsibility, focus, and professionalism. The young guard, having returned to his duties, carried with him a newfound sense of awareness. The embarrassment of being relieved from his post had faded, replaced by a quiet determination to prove himself. Every morning, he would stand at attention with a renewed focus, ensuring that each movement, each gesture, and each adjustment of his uniform was executed with precision. He had come to understand that the royal guard's role was more than ceremonial. It was symbolic of the monarchy itself. Each member represented centuries of history, tradition, and dedication. By maintaining exacting standards, they honored not only the institution they served, but also the values they themselves embodied. In the palace, officers and staff continued to reflect on the significance of the event. The intervention by Prince William had prompted discussions among senior officials about leadership, mentorship, and the importance of balancing discipline with support. While the act had been direct and public, it was also a moment that reinforced accountability and pride in service. Guards who witnessed the event found themselves more attentive, more mindful of their roles, and more committed to upholding the traditions of the royal household. The story became a teaching moment, reminding all members of the guard that even minor lapses could carry consequences, yet these moments could also serve as opportunities for growth. Prince William himself took time to reflect on the incident. He understood the scrutiny that accompanied his actions, how every movement was observed not only by those present, but also by the public, media, and historians. Yet, he also recognized that leadership sometimes required courage and decisiveness, even in unexpected situations. By acting swiftly and thoughtfully, he had reinforced a culture of excellence and accountability within the palace. His actions demonstrated that leadership was not merely about titles or appearances. It was about being present, aware, and willing to take responsibility when necessary. As the story of the incident reached the public, reactions were mixed, but largely positive. Many admired Prince William's hands-on approach to leadership and his commitment to upholding the highest standards. Social media platforms buzzed with discussion, with users praising the prince for demonstrating accountability, discipline, and care for the traditions of the monarchy. News articles highlighted the human aspect of the story, emphasizing the young guard's experience and the lessons learned. Commentators noted that the incident revealed a more relatable side of the royal family, showing that even royals could make decisions in real time, face difficult moments, and lead with integrity. The young guard's journey did not end with public recognition or private mentorship. His performance improved steadily, and he became a source of inspiration for others within the royal guard. New recruits, hearing about the incident, were reminded of the importance of focus, readiness, and precision. The story was shared not to single out mistakes, but to emphasize that discipline and attention to detail were crucial qualities, cultivated through practice, guidance, and reflection. In this way, the incident had a ripple effect, strengthening the Guard as a whole and fostering a culture of excellence. Within the palace, senior officials took steps to formalize some of the lessons learned from the event. Training programs were reviewed and refined, ensuring that every Guard understood the significance of their role and the standards expected of them. Mentorship sessions were expanded, allowing experienced officers to guide newer members in both technical skills and professional comportment. By combining instruction with support, the palace ensured that Guards were prepared not only for ceremonial duties, but also for the pressures of public scrutiny. The incident had shown that leadership extended beyond command. It required encouragement, guidance, and the ability to turn challenges into opportunities for growth. The young Guard, over time, came to appreciate the subtle but profound ways in which the experience shaped him. He learned that mistakes, when addressed thoughtfully, could be valuable lessons. He discovered resilience, the ability to recover quickly from setbacks, and the importance of self-awareness. Each day at his post became a reaffirmation of his commitment to duty, and each movement a reflection of the standards he now understood more deeply than ever before. What had once been a moment of humiliation had become a defining moment of personal and professional development. For Prince William, the event reinforced his understanding of the delicate balance between authority and compassion. Leadership, he recognized, was not about instilling fear or commanding obedience alone. It was about guiding others to reach their potential while upholding tradition and dignity. The incident illustrated that even brief actions could leave lasting impressions and shape the culture of an institution. His decisive, measured response became an example of thoughtful leadership that respected both the traditions of the monarchy and the humanity of those he led. Public fascination with the story continued to grow as people reflected on the broader implications. Many saw it as a lesson in accountability, emphasizing that attention to detail and personal responsibility mattered in every sphere of life. Others admired the prince for modeling leadership in a real-world situation, showing that high standards could be upheld with calm authority and fairness. The story was cited in discussions about mentorship, professionalism, and the importance of learning from mistakes. It became more than a single moment. It was a narrative that resonated with anyone striving to achieve excellence. Over the following months, the palace maintained a careful balance between tradition and modernization. The Royal Guard continued its ceremonial duties, but there was a renewed emphasis on reflection, training, and personal growth. Guards were encouraged to approach their responsibilities thoughtfully, understanding the symbolic weight of their actions. The young Guard, having fully embraced these lessons, became an example for his peers, demonstrating that discipline, resilience, and professionalism could coexist with humility and openness to learning. The incident also had a lasting impact on the way the palace approached public relations and storytelling. Officials realized that moments of human interaction, decisive, principled, and thoughtfully executed, could be shared in ways that strengthened public understanding of the monarchy. The story of Prince William and the young Guard was used not to sensationalize, but to educate, illustrating the values of discipline, mentorship, and responsible leadership. This approach reinforced trust and admiration for the royal household, emphasizing the continuity of tradition alongside a modern understanding of leadership. The young Guard, reflecting on his experience, often recounted the events to newcomers and colleagues, emphasizing the lessons he had learned. He explained that mistakes were not failures but opportunities to demonstrate resilience, improve skills, and deepen understanding. His personal growth inspired others to approach their roles with greater focus and care. The palace recognized that leadership was not only about the actions of royals, but also about the development of individuals within the institution. By fostering a culture of accountability, mentorship, and reflection, the Royal Guard continued to thrive as a symbol of excellence. Prince William's reputation as a leader grew as a result of the incident. Observers noted his ability to combine authority with thoughtfulness, discipline with compassion, and decisiveness with reflection. His actions demonstrated that leadership was most effective when it guided others toward growth rather than simply enforcing rules. The story of the young guard became intertwined with the prince's image as a thoughtful, principled, and engaged member of the royal family, dedicated to preserving tradition while nurturing the development of those around him. As time went on, the incident became part of the larger narrative of the palace's history. Visitors, staff, and historians reflected on it as an example of the ongoing relevance of discipline, mentorship, and accountability in ceremonial life. The story served as a reminder that even in the most structured and traditional environments, moments of intervention, thoughtful guidance, and principled leadership could have lasting effects. It was a testament to the enduring value of careful observation, decisiveness, and the courage to act when necessary. Ultimately, the events of that morning taught lessons that went far beyond the palace walls. The young guard learned resilience, attention to detail, and the importance of personal responsibility. Prince William demonstrated leadership, integrity, and the ability to act decisively in the service of tradition and excellence. The palace as a whole recognized the significance of balancing discipline with mentorship, ensuring that future generations of guards would benefit from both rigorous training and thoughtful guidance. And for the public, the story offered a glimpse into the human side of the monarchy, a reminder that even the most esteemed institutions are shaped by moments of care, observation, and principled action. In the end, the incident became more than a story of a brief correction. It became a narrative about growth, learning, and the values that underpin service, leadership, and tradition. The young guard's career continued with renewed purpose and confidence. Prince William's leadership was further admired, and the royal guard emerged stronger, more disciplined, and more aware of the weight of their responsibilities. The story of that morning would be remembered for years to come as a moment when a small action reflected much larger principles, leaving a legacy of accountability, growth, and thoughtful leadership within the palace and beyond.